and led her through the long sweet grass under the blossoming boughs to the palace garden. When they came to the terrace, the Princess loosed a lantern from her girdle, set it on the stone balustrade close by where one of the white peacocks perched in fluffy feathery slumber, kindled it, and threw open the horn door. A flood of light streamed out, bright as spring sunshine, and fell full upon her, and then the King saw that her gown was not white, as it had seemed in the moonlight, but was the colour of yellow gold, and her hair was red gold, and her eyes were of gold and grey mingled. Then, for the first time in all his life, the King thought of himself and of his own happiness, and he caught her hands and said, "Nothing will ever again content me, not even doing good to my people, if I must part from you. Will you stay and be my Queen?" The Princess said, "I am seeking my fortune. Do you think you are it?" "I do not know, my dear," said the King, "whether I am your fortune, but I know well enough that you are mine." Then the Princess clapped her hands and said, "That is the right answer. I have travelled half round the world to hear it. And will you love me always?" "Always, my Queen," said he, "exactly the same as you will love me. We are not of the race that changes heart." So then they kissed each other, as lovers should, and wandered along the yew tree avenue, deep in lovers' talk, and never even heard the crowd that the Magician had brought to the front door. So when the crowd found that the palace door was locked for the night, it went home again. But it came back in the morning, with trumpets and banners and scraps of coloured stuff tied over its white clothing, and the King went out to meet it. When the crowd saw him, everyone began to shout, "Down with Alban! Down with the White King! Free beer! No more washing!" and things like that. Then the King stood forth and said, "What have I done but seek for your good? When, till now, have I thought of my own happiness? Who has stirred you up to these ill thoughts of me? My people, my own beloved people. Have my ears ever been closed to your complaints? Have you wrongs? Tell me, and I will right them. Have you sorrows? Make them known, and let me soothe them. Do you not know that your King is your servant, and lives but to do you good?" And the crowd grumbled and muttered, and one voice cried, "We don't want to be done good to. We want to enjoy ourselves." "I did not know," said the King gently, "but now you have spoken I will at once appoint a minister of public enjoyment, and—" The Magician was watching the crowd, and he saw how the sight of the King's good face and the sound of his good voice were working on their hearts that had once loved him. Now Negretti sprang forward. "One word, brother," he cried, and led the King into the shadow of a close-clipped yew-tree walk. The moment they were hidden, he caught his brother's arm, and whispered a wicked spell, and the first words of it were in Persian, and the next in Greek, and after that came words in Arabic and Spanish, and the speech of the county of Essex, and the last words of all were, "Be changed to a stone." And so strong was the spell that the King was turned to a stone that very minute, a great white stone, and fell under the yew hedge and lay there. Then the Magician said, "Ha, ha!" and after waiting so long as he deemed prudent, he went back to the people and said, "I regret to inform you that your King has proved quite unreliable as a man of business. When I urged him to sign a written agreement to keep you always in a good humour, he refused, and then he remembered an urgent appointment in Nova Scotia, and he has gone and taken most of the crown treasure with him. But do not despair, I will be your King, and I have an income quite sufficient to keep up a small establishment of my own, and my golden argosies are now on the way from the Indies, bearing all manner of precious things, and bales of plush are on their way from Yorkshire. So now I am King." The people believed him, for they had never known a king who spoke anything but the truth. So they shouted, "Long live the King!" and the matter was settled. That very day Negretti had the palace painted magenta, and covered all the window sashes and mantelpieces with gold paint, and stuck embossed coloured scraps on them. Then he went out into the garden to get a good look at his magenta palace from the outside, and as he went along the clipped yew walk, there was the Princess Perihelia weeping over the white stone. "What are you crying for?" he asked. "I'm crying for the White King," said she. "And why do you cry here?" said the Magician. "I don't know," said the poor Princess, and she looked so beautiful that the Magician went straight into the palace and told the Prime Tailor to sew new rubies all over his new purple plush suit, because he was going a-courting. The very next day Negretti put on the purple plush suit as well as the royal crown, and went to the wing of the palace which the White King had set apart for the Princess Perihelia to live in. Alban's crown was made of silver and pearls and moonstones, and the new king had ordered a new crown, all gold and stuck as full of rubies and emeralds and sapphires as a really good Christmas cake is of plums. I do not mean the cake they call good wholesome school cake, but the kind they have at home when there is a party. He took his many-coloured retinue with him, and they waited on the terrace while the Magician knocked at the door. "Come in," said the Princess. "I've come to marry you," said the Magician, coming to the point at once, for he had arranged to have a procession that afternoon, and he was a little pressed for time. But Perihelia said, "No, thank you." The Magician could hardly believe his ears. "But you'll be Queen of the land," said he, "and that's what you would have been if you'd married my brother, and I suppose what you wanted to be." "Oh no, it isn't," said she. "Well, what did you want?" said he. "I wanted to be the White King's wife," said she. "It's the same thing," he said. But she said, "No, it isn't, not a bit." And it was in vain that he showed her his best plush suit and the plush suits of his retainers. She simply wouldn't look at them, nor at the precious stones either. So at last he went off to his palace to make more rubies and precious stones and things like that, and she went off to cry over the white stone. Now, a lot of tell-tale tits had built their nests above the palace, and some of them flew off and told the Magician how Perihelia was always crying in the yew avenue over the white stone. So he said to his slaves, "Get a handcart and carry the thing onto the middle of the bridge and drop it in the river." So they did, and the stone stuck end up in the mud. And when the golden argosies of the Magician came up the river, bearing peacocks and apes and turquoises, every single galley split on that stone, and the whole treasure went to the bottom, all but the peacocks, and they flew away into the country of a neighbouring king, who thought every one should be useful and not ornamental. So he cut off the peacocks' tails and clipped their wings, and tried to teach them to lay turkeys' eggs. But it is very difficult to get a peacock to do anything useful. So then the Magician set a lot of people dredging for the lost treasure, and, among other things, they fished up some poor dead apes, and the big white stone, and as the stone seemed to have been rather in the way in the bed of the river, they carted it away to the fields behind the town, where the white jonquils grew, and dumped it down there, and left it among the long grass. And the Princess could not come and cry over it there, because she did not know where it was, and besides she was very busy, for after she had refused to marry him, the Magician said, "Very well then, you can just do the free washing." For the royal housekeeper had given 5 minutes' notice, and left at the end of it, as soon as the new king had the palace painted magenta, and no one else knew how to do washing by white magic. And though the people had sneered at it in the White King's time, they stood out for it now, and said free washing was what they had always been accustomed to. Poor Perihelia did not know the white magic, but she washed by the sunlight magic, and everything she sent home from the wash was pinky, or pearly, or greeny, like the little clouds in a May dawn. The people were pleased, but not the Magician. "I like a colour to be a colour," he said. "I hate your half-measures." He was beginning to remodel the kingdom to his own fancy. Instead of a Lord Chief Good-doer, he had a Lord Chief Magician, and instead of the Education Department, he had a permanent committee of black and coloured magic, and he shut up the free wash-houses. "Who wants to wash?" said he, and he ordered a free distribution of nasty medicine instead. And altogether he was really beginning to enjoy himself, when another tell-tale tit came fluttering in at the window of his laboratory, and perching on the top of a crucible, told him of a rumour.